About 30 years ago, I heard a leader within the evangelicalism here in America make the statement that we needed to target big cities, and we needed to focus on them because essentially we needed numbers and we needed to generate, and he, kind of hesitated to say it, but it was bold, we needed to generate cash. We needed to work on these things because without this, the church would end up failing at its mission. Is that the case? Is that the way it has to be? I'm Pastor Tim Holscher, looking at the ministry of the Spirit. We're looking at the 7 letters that Jesus spoke to 7 churches in Revelation 2 and 3. And as we continue to say, though they're written to these, each letter ends by telling us that these letters are written to all the churches and to all of us as individual believers or people that might read these. And we need to take to heart what is said. On top of that, the Spirit is speaking these things. And so as we come to the 6th of these churches in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 7, we read to the angel or the messenger, referring to the pastor of that church who's responsible for its character, of the church in Philadelphia. Write, the one who is holy, who is true, who has the key of David, who opens and no one can shut, and shuts and no one opens. He has this to say. This church existed in the first century. This church has existed through history. And any church that has real problems one way or another, one of the areas where they're going to have problems, especially when we see this, I think, again today, is that people want to make Jesus into, and I always use the expression, they want to turn Jesus into hippie Jesus. They want to turn Jesus into like our best friend, our buddy Jesus. Let Jesus be your best friend. Let Jesus help you, give you the best life ever. All these kind of things. And they fail to realize that Jesus, he addresses this church and he says, I'm the Holy One. Holy meaning I'm the one that is uniquely distinct. I really am one who is uniquely set apart. I did become man, but I am still this very unique being because he's also God. He's true. He's genuine. He's not the one that kind of is, I don't know. He's trying to discover himself. There's a lot of people today in evangelicalism that have asked the question, when did Jesus figure out that he was God? When did he figure these things out? He was true. He understood these things. Did he always exercise that omniscience as a man? No, he didn't. But he was true and he knew these things. And he has the key of David, and I believe the key of David is emphasizing that he has the right with regard to the people of Israel. That's going to be important, but also has the right then to reign in regard to these things. And he says he opens and no one can shut, and he shuts and no one opens. In other words, he's the one that sets the opportunities, and you can't force those doors open. There was a speaker at a conference, again, about 30 years ago, that made a similar statement. He says, we need to get this work done. He says, and we need to do this. And I think he probably said it accidentally, because I can guarantee you as a speaker that sometimes you open your mouth and what you say is not really what when you look at it, you're going, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was horrible. But he said, we need to do this. We need to do this with God. But even if not, we need to get it done anyway. And that very statement, he's suggesting even if God's not with it, we should go ahead and do it anyway. No, if God shuts the door, that work isn't going to get done because he's the one that gives the opportunity for that. And so Jesus says, I open this. And he says this to say, I know your works. So again, we've had this with many things. I know your works. Let's look at your works. I've placed before you an open door, and no one can shut that door. In other words, I've given you an opportunity. And no matter what the world tells you, oh, you can't do this without numbers. You got to have numbers to get this done. Oh, you got to have money to get this. You don't need any of that. You just need him to put before you an open door. That's all you need. Do you know missions over the centuries was not driven by cash? All the money that missionaries had to acquire to be able to go overseas and care. You had people that got on ships and sailed around the world, and they came in there and they just gave the gospel to people, and they just lived very simply. It's not done by having a lot of money. In fact, I regularly tell people this at our church to remind them, you can set up a ministry saying, we're going to do this ministry so that we can reach people. But you know what? The real ministry God has for you is the one where he's put an open door before you and an opportunity, and all you can do is be ready for it when it comes. Because it may not be some event that I'm holding here at the church where I'm going to reach people by getting all the people to come to this event, or we can go down in our city park. We've had some church events down there, and you do those, and we're going to try to reach people there. Things like that. You can try that. But it's that person you run into, to put this in the context of the town I live in, the people you run into at the post office or at the grocery store or sitting down when you order a hamburger from the lady that fixes hamburgers out of a food cart here in our town. Things like that. It's these opportunities. It's the people you run into when you're just out and about. Those are the ministry opportunities that God's planned for you. A lot of times they're not these planned events. And so he says, I've set that open door before you. I've given you these opportunities. And no one can shut it, because I know that you have just a little strength. See, here's the key of this. It's not that they got a lot of power. It's not that they can muscle this door open, that they can push it open. That they're going to do it. It's that they don't have the strength for it, so he's done it. And yet, despite the fact that they don't have strength, you have kept my word. You have guarded my word. This is a church that holds the word of God very precious and very dear, and they have not denied my name, implying there's been some challenges. Some things have been hard. In fact, one of those things, I think, if we remember this from one of the previous churches where he said this, he says, behold, I will make those from the synagogue of Satan. I believe this is a group that he says they claim to be Jews and they are not, but they lie. These are people that are, I think, claim to be Christians, but they claim to be Jews because they're spiritually, they look at themselves as spiritual Israel, but they're not really, and they're lying. And so he doesn't even call them a church, he calls them a synagogue. He says, I will make them come and bow down before your feet. Now, lest we look at this and think, what in the world does that mean? It simply means that when Christ comes and takes his church, and we are with him, that when he judges these people who are unbelievers, they're going to see us standing with him. He's the judge, not us. We're not judging them, and they bow and worship him. They're not worshiping us. But while they're worshiping him, we are standing there with Jesus Christ. It's a very beautiful picture. In fact, Jesus made a statement about this in John 17. He prays about this twice, but this verse is very simple. John 17:23, I and them and you and me, that they may be perfected in unity, or literally in one thing, that's in the body, perfected in that one body, so that the world may know that you sent me, number one. They're going to see all of us together, and they're without a doubt going to see all these believers unified, and they're going to say, God the Father really did send the Son, and that you love them. That they're going to actually see those people are the objects of God's love, even as you have loved me. God has directed love towards us in the same way that he's loved the Son. Over here, he says, those people are going to understand, I have loved you. He adds a note here that he doesn't ask for over there in John 17:3 here. John 17, excuse me. So here he's saying, those people are going to stand before us. This is an encouragement to these believers, that these unsaved people that have given them some trouble in the world and made church life hard, those people are eventually, they're as unbelievers, they're going to recognize that we've been loved by God the Son. And he says, because you have kept my word about patient endurance. I literally think this would be better. Because you have kept the word about my patient endurance. And I believe what we have here is not just that we've had people now that have changed Jesus into a hippie Jesus, but we've had people that they so try to make Jesus so much like us that instead of having this Jesus that is very quiet on the cross, there's 7 things that he says from the cross, and none of them are harsh or vindictive. And apparently, by the time that the Philippian church came along, there were people that were suggesting that Jesus Christ was not patient, and indicating, even in the time of the church, that Jesus is still not patient. And they want this Jesus that's going around judging the world all the time right now. And he's not doing that at the present time. He was patient on the cross, and he remains patient. So he says, since you kept or have guarded the word about, I would take this to be my patience, I will keep you, I will guard you, tereo again. Same word that we have guarded this word about him. Well, I'm going to tereo, I'm going to guard or keep you out from the hour of temptation. Not take you out of it. He doesn't use the word to take you out. I'm going to guard you out of that. I'm going to take you out. You're not going to be in that hour of temptation that is coming upon the whole world to test. And this temptation, 2 times here, is a temptation that is going to elicit that which is evil. It's a test to find out what doesn't work. The tribulation period, Daniel's 70th week, is going to prove the real character of these people that maybe I live around right now and they act like nice people, but you put them to this kind of a test and you'll see what kind of people they really are. I mean, they're going to well, we could get into teaching the book of Revelation, but let's move on. And it's going to test the whole world, those that live on the earth. And it's the idea here of those who oikomene, those who have settled down at home on this earth. This earth is their home. That is not our home. Our home, he says, we are citizens of heavens, over in Philippians. And he says, I am coming soon. So hold on to what you have so that no one can take away your crown. And I think that this is important because one of the temptations for a church like this that is weak in strength, the pastor's weak in strength, is maybe just kind of give up on some of this, compromise a little bit like some of these other churches. Give in and maybe things will be easier. No, just hold to what you have. You don't need to give that up. If you hold to something that's not biblically true, fine, that's okay. But he says they have held on to some good stuff. Hold it firm even more so that no one can take away your crown. There's a crown of life. There's a crown of rejoicing, boasting for these things, certain things that as believers we do. And then the one who conquers, that's a true believer. Remember, keep in mind, they're weak. They're weak. And that's not a criticism of Jesus. He says, I've done this because you are weak. I've given you these opportunities because you are weak. It's your power let me back up. It's my power, Jesus says, that is seen in our weakness. So the one who conquers, or the one who is an overcomer, the victor, the winner, that's because they believe, I will make him a pillar. That's something strong. That's a support. I'm going to make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he, that is my God, will never go out from it. See, all of us believers are going to be surrounding God, and we're like pillars in that temple, and God never leaves that temple anymore. And we'll write on him the name of my God. Why? Because we belong to him. And the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem. That's where we're going to be out there in the future, which comes down of heaven. And my new name, not the name that everybody knows him by now, but the new name he has, because we belong to him. We belong to the Father, we have his name. We belong to the Son, we have his name, and this is our residence. I always think of your parents writing your name in the back collar of your shirt when they send you off to camp or something so that it gets home, and this is who it belongs to, and this is where they're from. And he says, that's what I'm going to do. And again, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Maybe you find yourself in a church that seems weak. It seems weak from a worldly point of view because it doesn't have a lot of power. And by power, I mean it doesn't have worldly, earthly power because it doesn't have numbers. It doesn't have money. It doesn't have strong support from the community to accomplish these tasks. But it does have a door of ministry that the Lord has opened to this church, and nobody can stop that. Nobody can push that door closed as long as the Lord has opened it for this church. And that's a good thing. Maybe you find yourself in those churches, and maybe you're like this minister in this church that you're tempted. Maybe we could give up on this stuff, and maybe it would make church life easier. We ought to stop and say, wait a second. We're supposed to be doing the ministry he gave to us, not pursuing and chasing after these other things that the world says. I want you to do ministry like this. I want you to do a clothing drive. I want you to do a food drive. Not that those things are bad, but the world dictates that, and the church goes, oh, that. We don't have we could take up a food drive here in our church, and that's not much. Well, it's not what you're supposed to do. Our ministry is going to be to believers and sharing the gospel with unbelievers. This is the work he set before us. Maybe you find yourself in a church that's characteristic of the church at Philadelphia. Hold on to those things he's given. Hold to those things. And be encouraged by the fact you can carry out the work that he set before us. And with that, I wish you a good day in the Lord, and thank you for joining me.